All right, what is going on, Gorilla Gang? So today we are going to be doing our rant video with a little bit of information along with it. So I'm going to be teaching you guys how to make ranger beads while I rant about land navigation, stupid people, and it hits the fan preparedness in general. All right, let's get into it. So I'm going to be teaching you guys two methods of ranger beads that I like. So this one is going to be if you have a carabiner, a whistle, and some sort of keychain. And then this one is just going to be 100% 550 cord or paracord and beads, and that's about it. All right, so let's get off onto it. So you have your carabiner, you have your accessories and all the shenanigans that you want to have. If you want to add these little mini compasses as well, I stopped including these in my land nav kits and my ranger beads somewhat recently, just because these keep falling apart. I want to love them, but they're too cheap and they're too inexpensive, and it's not worth it. They do make mini compasses out there. If you want to take your ranger beads and add a mini compass to it, that's absolutely an option that you can go with. It's just not an option I'm taking. All right, so next, what you're going to need to make ranger beads. First, I have a Fisker's pair of scissors, just your standard run-of-the-mill lighter. It could literally be anything. I mean, if you guys want to use matches, you can. I don't know why you would, but you can. You're going to need a spool of 550 cord. You can pretty much get this from any arts and crafts store, or you could just buy it online. I buy mine online just because it's simple. And then you're going to need your accompanying beads. I have beads, these are 6mm beads. I have them in white, I have green, I have yellow, and then black. I was selling these in different colors for ranger beads, but it just got to a point of being a nuisance, so I stopped, and now I just have, you know, an assortment of random colors of beads, and I mostly just go with the black ones. All right, so right off the bat, or well, actually not right off the bat, because we're probably like, what, 2 minutes in by now? Anyway, so you're going to need your assortment of 550 cord. I usually go, I don't know, roughly like 1.5-ish. I'm just kind of guesstimating, and then I'm going to cut off a section, and this is what you're going to have, is just one section of paracord. What you're going to do is then pull out the guts. You do not need these completely. You're going to need one small section of the guts. I like to keep these and not throw them away, because they're actually incredible fire starters. All right, so we have our small section of guts. We don't need this yet, but we will need it once we're placing the beads. All right, so we have our section of paracord. What we're going to do next is we're going to take, if you're going this route, a little bit easier for you guys, I am just going to go to the other side of the camera and show you. All right, here we go. Probably took this out of my mouth. Kind of making a semi-M shape. So what you're going to do, and you could go right side or you could go left side, it doesn't really matter. I usually just start with my left first. You're going to go under your two main sections of paracord, all right, with the left side. So it's going to look like this, okay? And then you're going to take your right side, you're gonna go under, across, and then through, okay? Now it's gonna look like this. And then you're going to tighten, and then you're going to do the exact same thing on the opposite side. So you go under, all right? And then you go under that piece, across, and then through. And then you tighten it. And that is going to be essentially all you need to start your ranger beads. So then what you're going to do, not putting that in my mouth because then I can't talk. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so you're going to cut off your sides. Usually I just cut off one side and then the other. Actually, you know what? Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Because what I like to do is tighten one side after I got this one. So I'm gonna take my lighter, blarp, and now that shouldn't come undone. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to tighten this side, try to get this knot as tight as I possibly can. And then I'm going to cut the other side and then do the exact same thing. So this is to ensure that the paracord doesn't back out. All right, and that should be what you need to start your Ranger beads. All right, so now that we have this section, what we're going to do is we're going to take that 550 cord section that I was talking about, the guts. You're going to loop this around, and what this is going to do is this is going to be your start to get your beads onto your actual paracord. So because the paracord is just thick enough, and this is actually perfect because when your beads are on your paracord, you don't want them just shifting around all willy-nilly while you're hiking and rucking. So it's actually great that it's just a little snug. So if you are making these and your Ranger beads are the wrong size and they're just flipping and flopping all about, well, how are you going to keep pace count if you actually can't? This is the point of this, is to be able to tally them, right? And it stays where it is because there's a little bit of friction. If your beads are too loose, there's not going to be that friction. You're not actually going to be able to keep pace. All right, so what we are going to have is 9 beads on bottom and then 4 beads on top. The reasoning for this, 2, 4, 6, the reasoning for this is that there are 1,000 meters in a click. So a click is going to be one length of a grid square on your map. So what you need to do is you need to move one of the bottom sections of the Ranger beads every time that you walk 100 meters. Well, how do you know what 100 meters is, you ask? Well, I'm glad that you asked that. So 100 meters is going to be measured by your pace count. Well, how do you get a pace count? I'm glad you asked. So you're going to find your pace count by measuring out 100 meters. I highly recommend using a rangefinder. You could use a range R card, since a pace count is a rough estimation anyway, but you want to be as precise as you can. And there's your section of Ranger beads, just like that. All right, and that's fairly simple. And we'll go into the this one next. Okay, so you can use a range R card to circle back. You can use a range R card to measure out 100 meters. But the thing about your pace count is it is already a rough estimation. And technically speaking, you could have numerous pace counts. You could have so many different pace counts. It gets stupid. If you really wanted to get into the weeds of it, like if you really wanted to be, silly about it, you could have so many different pace counts through, walking uphill or just walking through foliage. You could have a pace count for flatter ground. You could have a pace count for marshes. I've seen some guys go so far as to keep their pace count exact, that they'll use the exact metric that's taught in FM 3-25.26, which is land navigation and map reading. They'll go so far to keep their pace count that they will go around an obstacle, measure how far they went laterally from their azimuth, and then they're going to keep track, get back on their pace count, right, going around the obstacle in heading of their azimuth, and then they stop their pace count, and then they backtrack around the obstacle to continue their azimuth. Just shoot a new fucking azimuth. Fuck. The guys that know land navigation know what I'm talking about, right? Just shoot another azimuth. I don't understand why we're so obsessed with keeping the same fucking azimuth. You're not married to it. It's not like some infinite metric. If you go laterally, left or right, trying to walk along your azimuth, just shoot another one. It doesn't matter, you know? Okay, cool. So this is roughly where I should be. This is where my objective is. I'm just gonna shoot another azimuth and I'm gonna start walking that direction. Too easy. While editing this video, I realized that I literally just completely forgot to, you know, actually divulge into further of how to get your pace count. I realized that if you watch any of my land navigation content, you can find this out, but nonetheless, we're already here. So you are going to get your pace for 100 meters. How you're going to do this. So you're going to take your rangefinder, you're going to laze a tree, a post, a car, something larger more than likely that you can identify that's what you're lasing as 100 meters. You are then going to walk to that 100 meters. How are you going to walk that, you ask? So you are going to start off at the exact point that you lazed. Lay down a rock, lay down something identifiable that you can come back to. Because what you want to do is actually, you probably want to get your pace count about 3 times or so, then you can get a median of what it's going to be. So you're always going to start off with your right foot. Once again, your right foot. You're going to take your first step, and then your second step is where you start counting. This is going to be your 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's how you're gonna get your pace count. So personally, I am 5'10", 190 pounds, and my pace count is 64. How do I keep this in my noodle? Well, pace count of 64 and 64, teehee something nerdy, and that's how I keep my pace count. Not only that, and I did go into this in the video, you could have a pace count for going uphill, you could have a pace count for going through foliage. The issue with going with a pace count of uphill is you have to then start taking into consideration the grade of the hill. Now, in land navigation, there is a lot of metrics and math that you could go into, and you could find out the grade by yourself. Well, correction, it takes 2 people to find the grade of a hill, and you can do it, absolutely. There's a little bit of math involved, you can do it, but the issue is trying to get a pace count for going uphill, downhill, is going to depend on your grade, and it's also going to depend on foliage as well. So most of the time, I kind of just don't even bother with a pace count over heavy grades, because it's just like, what's the point? Why even bother? You can still keep your pace count to get a rough estimate, and a pace count already is a rough estimate. So once again, my pace count is 64. Usually the vast majority of people are going to be in like the 60s and 70s. Most people, that's roughly where your pace count is going to be, 50s, 60s, 70s. It's going to depend on how wide your stride is. Now also things that could come into consideration with this is, are you wearing a larger rucksack? Are you wearing some sort of battle belt? Do you have things weighing you down where you're going to be walking differently than normal? That's something that you really want to take into consideration. The most of, you know, are you walking the same? Before you step out, there is nothing wrong with reconfirming your pace count. So if you guys have time with your ruck, with your battle belt, with your chest rig, what have you, reconfirm your pace count before you step. There is nothing wrong with reconfirming your pace count. Just going to make you that much more proficient. Once again, the pace count is going to be a rough estimate anyway. This is so that you can kind of just gauge roughly where you're at. It's not like the end all be all. Once again, like was described in the video, I think it might be later in the video, so spoilers. There's different pace counts, there's different times to use pace counts. Sometimes you might go an entire land navigation and never use your pace count once because it's not necessary. Pace count is beneficial in some scenarios, not all, but it's a nice tool to have on you, especially with how inexpensive it is and how simple it is to make. All right, that's all I have. Back to the video. If you start breaking brush, you're starting to get a little bit more confused about, the terrain association and things don't quite seem right. These really do shine in that way. This, right, instead of us starting the first knot up here, or correction, instead of starting it down here and weaving the beads through on this side, we have to then create a knot down here in the same way, weave beads through on this side as well. The only difference being is that instead of tying it off here at the bottom, now we're just gonna have a knot, and these are just going to, be sitting freely, which doesn't really matter. If you don't want a carabiner, if you don't want any of this, it technically speaking does not matter at all. Like in the absolute slightest does it not matter. If anything, this is just the cheaper and simpler way to make it. The issue being for me is that sure, cost is different for materials, right? But I still have to put the same amount of time into it. If anything, it almost takes about the same time. Well, no, I guess technically speaking, these ones are a little bit faster, but I still have to weave the beads through regardless. Okay, so from here, it's almost identical as the other one, so I'm gonna get back on to discussing pace counts. Okay, so you are going to measure out your 100 meters for your pace count. The best way to do this is using a rangefinder, because you're going to get an exact number of how far you have to walk. As much precision as you can get in relation to how much time you're using, precision is definitely going to be helpful. Once again, this is going to be in relation to time. You can go for precision, and you can replot your points and 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 replot your points. But the more time you waste trying to get that precision, other people are going to find the objective faster, or depending on what the mission is, depending on what you guys are doing, you're just burning daylight. And this could also come down to PCCs, PCIs, and how much pre-planning you went into your op. Situation dictates, mission dictates, and there you go. Oh, fuck. There you go. Huzzah! So easy. All right, so ranger beads are less of a difficulty to make, and it's more just so that it's time consuming. Easily make your own ranger beads and not waste the money buying them from me. The biggest thing for me is just how long it takes to make them, and that's about it. They're super simple. They're just time consuming, especially when I'm making hundreds of them. It's just time consuming. But anyway, back to pace counts. I would arguably say that a pace count dependent on your terrain isn't the most important thing ever. It is nice to know, it is nice to have in the back pocket if you do start getting lost, or if the terrain is just, unreadable. Pace counts, in my experience, really start to shine. The biggest benefits to knowing your pace count and having ranger beads is going to be in 3 different places. It's going to be in areas that you don't know, and the terrain is challenging to read. So maybe you're in, like just dense forests, right? Or hell, maybe the desert. So I'm just gonna say unfavorable terrain, right? Your pace count's going to be huge to be able to walk in one direction and know how far you've gone. That is one way that a pace count is going to be huge. The next is going to be unfavorable weather. So unfavorable weather like, fog, rain, cloud cover, et cetera, things that you are restricting your ability to see. That's another place that ranger beads are going to shine. And then the last one is going to be at night. At night's going to be huge because the biggest win the biggest, you know, cheat when it comes to land navigation is being able to read terrain. And if you can't read terrain, if you can't associate that terrain, well, you just lost a huge asset when it comes to terrain association, or when it comes to land navigation, is terrain association. So if you cannot associate the terrain, if you cannot read the land that you are navigating by just looking at it, then you're going to have to refer off of your two-dimensional map, and then you're going to have to use your pace count to, you know, get a feel for how far you've walked in what direction. So with ranger beads, a map, and a compass, you should be able to navigate anything. Realistically speaking, you should be able to navigate absolutely anything with only ranger beads, map, and a compass. Map, you're gonna have your contour lines, so you should know how much the elevation change is. You should know roughly what you're looking at, how the feel of the land is. And then with your ranger beads, you should know how far you have walked, and with your compass, you know what direction you're going. You can orient your map north. So with just those three things, I mean, you should be able to navigate absolutely anything. The biggest thing, once again, is going to come down to, can you read a map, can you terrain associate, and can you use ranger beads, and can you use your compass? I mean, they're unbelievably simple skills. They're unbelievably simple skills. I mean, hell, this is something that our ancestors did since the dawn of time. I mean, they probably didn't have, you know, the same maps by any stretch of the imagination that we did. But I mean, if you want to go into a industrial revolution and its consequences, you know, the vehicle really changed how much we view and see life, because once upon a time, the vast majority of people, they didn't need a map, they didn't need a compass, they didn't need any of this, because, well, they never really went more than like a 3 days walk away from their tribe, their village, what have you. They're always in the same mountains, they're always in the same terrain. And sure, they might have walked more than that. I mean, hell, like Davy Crockett, I mean, that guy walked a lot. So by no means is this going to, you know, relate to everyone, and not by any stretch of the imagination. But a lot of people, you know, they usually never left their hometown, and unfortunately, a lot of people that we know right now that you probably went to high school with, I mean, they've probably never left their hometown. So I guess some things never change. Biggest thing that I'm getting at is that, you know, even with the skills of with a compass and the skills of map and ranger beads, ranger cards, all that, you know, fancy jazz, you should know the land that you're in. You should know your community. You should know the nearby mountains and where rivers are, where streams are. You should already know these things. G46, no. And if you don't, you know, maybe go outside and just start exploring. I mean, people hate on us all the fucking time, saying that, you know, we're LARPers and, you know, we're just a bunch of nerds and, oh, it'll never happen. It's like, dude, no matter what, no matter who you are, no matter what job or what your goals in life are, it's usually, I can't say always, but it's usually going to be beneficial to you no matter what, of just going into the mountains and just learning how to endure the mountains, learning where water is, learning your own area, learning, you know, very, very simple but valuable skills. I mean, you know, as simple as, you know, basic first aid. Oh, I got a cut. Oh, what should I do about this? Oh, I've been hiking for X amount of miles over X terrain and my feet really aren't enjoying this. You know, was I walking incorrectly? Was the terrain that I was walking on maybe not the most favorable? Should I have had boot gaiters on? Probably yes. Should I had waterproof boots because the foliage that I was traversing through was significantly wet because it rained the night prior? you know, a little bit of experience can separate you from the new guys of just as simple as when it comes to land navigation, refusing to dead reckon, because you can read those contour lines on a map and be like, you know what? I don't feel like going this way. Sure, the map says that it's only like 300 meters. I mean, it can't, no, I'll take the half-mile walk that way because I can tell those 300 meters that way are through some absolutely schwacked terrain, and I don't want to go that way. That little bit of experience of going out in the mountains and training and hiking and you know, hanging out with people, just that little bit of experience, you know, could save your life. As much as that might be like overplayed to say, right? Of like, oh, this could save your life. It could, you know, just as simple skills as going out in the mountains, even with overlanders, right? And how many people do you think alive right now don't even know how to change a tire? They don't know how to change their oil. They don't know so many useful skills. I mean, so many guys don't know that, you know, baby powder is as beneficial as it is when hiking, when walking long distance. The vast majority of people have never hiked more than probably a couple of miles. There was a guy, the last Airbnb that I stayed at, and he said that the most that he had ever walked in his life was at Disneyland. And to me, to someone that's, you know, outside and out in the mountains all the time, that's insane. That's insane. That I can't even wrap my head around that. And that's not to sound like egotistical or, oh, I'm better than you, or oh, I've walked more than you, or her. But like, the fact that we have so many men alive that have never done anything. I grew up in the mountains, right? Like, I grew up in the mountains of the Pacific Northwest. The concept to me of never walking more than a couple of miles is just, it's bizarre to me. It's weird. It's just like, what do you mean? How have you never, what? Now, I understand that how many people have never done, like, you know, traditional land navigation, because, you know, I mean, the only reason that I do this so much, the only reason I like it, the only reason I have experience is more than likely Stockholm Syndrome, because, you know, I did it in the Army for so many years. It's probably Stockholm Syndrome. And if it's not, then cool. All right, so this has been pretty much my rant for right now. I'm going to call it here. And yeah, I hope you guys learned a little bit of something. I hope you guys, you know, got some entertainment out of it. As always, you know, I do sell land navigation things and stuff on my website if you're interested. I know that I talk about this topic a lot, and a lot of people probably don't give a single shit, but I don't care. This is my channel, and I can talk about whatever I want to. Anyway, yeah, that's all I have. Appreciate you guys. Until next time.